Wendy Gessing was a 50-year-old from Crest Hill, Illinois. She was the mother of one and had a sister and two brothers. On June 12th, 2021, Wendy left her job at a pizza place without warning. Wendy was later recorded on video at a local motel. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. One of the types of disappearances I labeled a few years ago after looking at all of Unfound's cases to that point was the walk-off. In actuality, this could also technically be called the runoff or drive-off or even the sail-off, depending on the circumstances. You know what I mean. But these are situations where a person is left on his or her own and did not return. Granted, in some of these incidents, there are reasons to believe the person had no intention of returning, and those are fairly straightforward. Yet, there is a category of the walk-off where we believe the missing person planned on coming back, but didn't. Some examples from Unfound's history: Jamie Bowen, Travis Murrow, Andrea Knabel, and there are many more. Well, with Wendy Gessing, we have a drive-off with the belief that she planned to return. But what happened when she left alone? And now a summary of the case. Wendy Gessing was the second of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. She got along with all of them, but that was not a surprise given Wendy's great personality. She graduated from high school, but while there she met the man she would marry. They ended up having a son in 1996. Everything seemed fine. But then things changed. After taking a house cleaning job in the early 2000s, Wendy began staying out all night and not coming home. Eventually, this led to a divorce, and Wendy admitting she had a drug problem. She struggled with this addiction right up until her disappearance, but at least Wendy had a new man in her life, Scott, who was trying to keep her clean and sober. So, on June 12th, 2021, Wendy was working at Scott's Pizza Place, a job she had while they had been a couple for over 10 years. At approximately 4 p.m., Wendy told a coworker that she received a call and Wendy had to go pick someone up. However, there is doubt that this phone call actually happened. Yet Wendy left. She did not return. A video would later show Wendy ended up at a local motel. She was never seen again. The car Wendy was driving, Scott's car, would eventually be found in perfect condition on a street in Joliet, Illinois, while her phone was found in an alley nowhere near there. In addition, the person Wendy allegedly planned to pick up that day has never been identified. Unfound is always on the side of the missing people. Yet, we realize that oftentimes these missing people are unreliable narrators in their own disappearances. Moreover, they often behave in unexplainable ways before disappearing. Contemplate why this happens more than we could have ever predicted, while you also try to answer these 3 questions during the interview. Number 1, how much do Wendy's prior stints of going missing affect your thinking on her disappearance? Number 2, why would the car end up in one location while Wendy's phone would be discovered somewhere totally different? And number 3, what are the chances that Wendy is still alive out there somewhere? Wendy's family is not sure what to think, but cannot dismiss the idea that her prior drug problems are the cause of her disappearance. The guest for this episode is Wendy's sister, Sarah. Unfound News. The newest Unfound now is out. I examined the February 2025 disappearance of Belva Day, a 95-year-old from Mountain Home, Arkansas. Please check it out on Unfound's YouTube channel. Next, unfortunately, my lawyer has recommended to me that the discovery materials I received from the first Pankey trial must be kept out of the public eye for now. There could just be some legal issues releasing them right now. I'll keep working on it. Finally, yep, this is a new episode. First one since 2024. I am back, I think. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the sister of Wendy Gessing, Sarah. Sarah, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you.
Let's start here. Just talk a little bit about your family. I'm not sure if you have any other siblings besides Wendy, but talk about a little bit about your family growing up, wherever that was. Was it in Illinois? Was it somewhere else? What can you say about growing up with Wendy and any other siblings you may have?
Okay, well, we did grow up in Joliet, Illinois, all of our life, and there is 4 of us children. I am the youngest, and I am the only child of my mom and my dad.
Okay.
And then Tim, Wendy, and Matt are children of my mom and her previous marriage.
Okay.
So there is 4 of us, and I would be the youngest one.
Okay. And I'm not going to ask you to do too much math in this interview, but what is the age spread between oldest and youngest?
Tim, who is passed away at 50, he is 18 months older than Wendy.
Okay.
So I think he was born in 69. Wendy was born in 71.
Okay.
And then my brother Matt was born in 75, and then I was born in 77.
Okay, so about 8 years spread from oldest to youngest.
Yes.
About that. Okay, and I'm sorry to hear about your. I guess your oldest, the oldest child is passed away. Then.
Yes.
Okay, sorry to hear that. Okay, thank you for that. Regarding you, and was it kind of boys and girls, or was it? Were you closer to maybe one of your brothers? I realized that Wendy had a different father, but a lot of times, of course, that does not matter. You and Wendy close, or did you find yourself closer to one of your brothers? How would you say all of you were? Was there certain cliques between the 4 of you growing up?
I was kind of close to all of them, but each of them were a little different. Like my brother Matt, who was closest to my age, we did kind of, we would fight, but we'd play a lot, growing up, and we were kind of closer in age, and all the other kids were, we also had step siblings at the time, so they were all in high school. But me and Wendy did get along quite a bit. Probably not till I was in high school. And then we more hung out together and, built a friendship out of our, besides being siblings. And my oldest brother, Tim, I always did have a close relationship with him. His was a little bit different. He was kind of fatherly to me and, took me places, did things, that kind of relationship.
Sure, being 8 years older than you were, then that would make a lot of sense. Sure. Okay. All right, so we got 4 kids, 3 by one father, and then you by a different father. All right, so we got that. We understand all of that now. Let's move on now to Wendy herself. Once again, she was, 6 years older than you were approximately, and I was born in 1970, so I know what it's like to grow up around that time, all us Gen Xers. What can you say about Wendy? What are some of the things, personality, what are some of the things you think of these days, maybe going back to her, teenage years, personality, hobbies, interests? Why don't you tell the listeners about Wendy?
Wendy, she had a very bubbly personality. She was very funny and outgoing. She was very happy. She loved crafts and decorating. She loved to cook. She loved to garden. That was probably one of her favorite things to do was garden. And she loved being a mom.
She loved being a mom. Well, of course, once she got older. Okay, and you said the 6 years difference make you get maybe some of her hand-me-down clothes. Did you do that in your family or not?
Oh yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, that was. I think back then, every kid got the hand-me-downs.
Okay. All right. What about in school? How did she do in school? High school. What can you say anything about that or education? Anything along those lines?
I don't know. I think she was just a typical, teenager. She met Jim at a very young age. I think 14. That's who she ended up marrying and having Josh with. So, and she moved in with him, pretty early on. And I was probably, still in junior high, middle school at the time. So, I didn't hang out a whole lot with her when she was in high school.
Right, because she already had a boyfriend.
She was gone a lot or working or,
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So, the father of her son Josh, they met in junior high school, and they ended up getting married. Wow, that's something.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And did she graduate high school?
She did.
She did. Okay. And what about after that? Did she get what kind of jobs did she have? Any jobs in high school? Part-time jobs like delivering pizzas or waitressing or anything like that? What do you remember? Just trying to.
She did just. I think she worked at like the hot dog place in the mall. Just some like random, And then after high school, she got into Cornerstone, and it was housing for mentally disabled adults. They would help them find work, and they would live in homes, but somebody would have to stay there and, kind of oversee the house and, make sure everybody was doing what they needed to do. So it was kind of like a caretaker type thing. So she did that for years.
Wow, she did. That takes a lot of responsibility. Wow. And she liked that.
She did.
Good for her. Okay.
She did. And she was very good at it with that group of people.
Okay. So being that she had this boyfriend, they ended up getting married. Did she move out of the house after she graduated? I'm guessing you were still living at home, so maybe she moved out when she was 17, 18, something like that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, what year did she have her son? The guy's name is Jim. The father of her son, his name is Jim. All right. What year did she have her son Josh? And you talked about how much she loved being a mother. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What kind of mother was she?
Well, she had Josh in '96, so he is 28 now.
Okay.
And I am still close to him. But when she had him, she quit work. She stayed home. She did all the school parties and, all the activities. And before he started school, she babysat other kids during the day just so she could stay home and also give Josh, other kids to be around. And then she didn't start working until he started, I think, first grade.
Okay. Did she end up having any other children besides Josh?
No.
All right. So just one son who is 28 now here in 2025.
Yes.
Okay. And we should note today we're doing this interview for everybody. We're doing this interview on February 27th of 2025. And in fact, right before we started, Sarah, you told me that Wendy's birthday is tomorrow.
Yes.
Wow. And so she would be turning 54 tomorrow.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I'm already 54. So I was born in 1970, August of 1970. Wow. And everybody should know we did not time it that way. That's just how things worked out. All right, so she's a stay-at-home mom. What kind of work did her husband do? What kind of work did Jim do?
Jim worked for Metra, train station.
Oh, okay. And he did that, and she stayed at home once she had Josh, kind of stay-at-home mom, taking care of everything else in their lives, and she really enjoyed doing that.
Yes.
Did you see her a lot? Of course, by that time, she had a son in '96. She would have been, I guess, 19. Did you two see a lot of each other once you two became like adults, back into the '90s, early 2000s, or not?
We did. I had my first daughter the year before she had Josh. I was 18.
Wow.
And I was single, and with her, she didn't have, a job that she had to go to. They lived in Indiana at the time, and we would go back and forth for weekends, or I'd go out there for a few days when I had days off. So our my oldest and her son, are best friends still, and basically kind of grew up together.
All right, so your two kids very, very close in age.
Yes.
Wow, just a year apart. Interesting. Okay. So let's move on to this. Now, of course, I realized at the time of her disappearance, she was with another guy, and we're going to talk about him at least a little bit. His name is Scott, but and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just because it's obvious, what eventually happened? Your opinion between Wendy and Jim, of course, the father of her son. At some point they split up. I don't know what year that was, but just a little bit on that. What do you think went on there?
Well, something changed in Wendy. She did start working out of the home, cleaning houses with a group of people. And she would not come home sometimes, and it really just caused a breakdown in the marriage, and inevitably around, I think it was 2003 or 4, that they ended up getting divorced.
Wow. How surprising was that to you?
It was very surprising. And I remember when it kind of first occurred to me, I'd call a couple times, she wasn't there, he didn't know where she was. But we drove out to Indiana, go to Josh's T-ball game, and he's 6, and he's all excited, and we show up, and there's no mom. Where's Wendy? And she hadn't come home that night, and it was just not typically like her at all. And then she would stay out here and there, and it was just, it was a different person.
Any insight into that? Once again, we talk. Of course, you can imagine this is a topic that we cover quite a bit over the last 8 years. But your best insight into that, sounds like things were going pretty well for her, and then all of a sudden she's going out all night. And was this something that was bubbling up in her for a long time? How do you view it now, or just took the wrong turn at the wrong second? Any insights at all?
It just seemed like maybe she got caught up in the wrong group of people, and and she was in over her head before she knew it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and that ended up leading, and of course they met when they were in high school. So this was it wasn't just that they had a son in '96. They had been together since they were teenagers. So in the '80s, and then here they are getting a divorce, 2003, 2004. I'm very sorry to hear that. And what arrangement was eventually made as far as the taking care of Josh and those two being divorced? What were the arrangements?
I believe she had custody, and was living with some other guy in Indiana. And I tried to go out there several times. and ended up bringing Josh back with me for several weeks for the summer.
Okay. So she, even though she was the one, like you said, that was staying out all night, and she got primary custody of Josh?
Yes.
Okay. All right. How would you then maybe explain once again? I realize you have your own life to lead. Maybe you even have more kids now. None of our business. But you said you had a daughter the year before Josh came along, and your perception of maybe the rest of like the 2000s up to like 2010, 2011. She's divorced. She's with another guy. Or is kind of the same behavior continuing that started when she was married?
Yes.
Okay.
And we did try to talk to her several times, and she admitted that she, had a drug problem.
Surprised by that. I mean, maybe you maybe even before she told you, maybe you suspected that anyway. I think that's what a lot of people would suspect. They start hearing somebody that, adult that's staying out all night and, not coming home. And I think these days is immediately what people think. Surprised that she had a drug problem. Maybe looking back at when she was younger, that she could get mixed up in something like that, or not that surprised.
I am very surprised because we watched my brother go through a really bad drug addiction.
Okay.
From the same drug. So.
Okay. All right, and what would she say when you would talk to her? I realize there were many conversations, but just maybe the general idea, did she say she was going to get help? And my understanding is she eventually did get help and kind of was cleaned her act up for a while, and of course we're going to get into that. But how did she respond when she and others, or you and others, would talk to her about it?
She would kind of play it off that, everything was fine. She had it under control, and, the guy she's with is really great, and we lived in 2 different states, so we didn't see her that often.
Yeah, that makes it tough.
But we saw enough to know that things weren't okay.
And this guy that she was with, was he kind of into the same thing? Did he have his own addiction issues?
Yes.
As well. That doesn't make it easy. Okay. All right, let's move on to this. We'll come back to that. And like I said, it's not, of course, we're here for her because she went missing. But even I know talking about this stuff, not easy either. So let's move on to something else. Let's talk a little bit about the guy that was in her life at the time of her disappearance. Of course, she went missing in June of 2021. What can you say about Scott? Do you know how they met? How they ended up having a relationship? What can you say about Scott, who, of course, we're going to talk about him a lot later, but let's kind of just set it up right now.
I believe she met Scott at a bar, and when she moved back here, she was kind of staying here and there at people's houses. She didn't really have a residence until she was like trying to get on her feet. And he did let her stay there at his house, and I think over time a relationship developed, and he got her a job at his pizza place that he owned, and they started to build a life together.
What year approximately do you think they started being a couple, or maybe first met, approximately?
I want to say they were together 13 or 14 years.
Wow, long.
So, yeah, it was shortly after she came back here. I don't know. I have to do the math.
That's fine. We'll just
like
so they were in a
2006 or 2006-ish, around there. I want to say.
Okay, that's fine. That's plenty. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so quite a while, over a decade. They were a couple, or had known each other at least for over a decade, and that kind of went to a relationship. They were living together, etc.
Yes.
Okay. Just in general, your family's opinion of Scott, was he good guy? Did he seem to care for Wendy? Given that Josh would have still been fairly maybe 10 years old when they first met, did he have any interactions with Josh? What can you say about Scott just in general as a guy?
He cared for Wendy quite a bit. And Josh lived there with them.
Mm-hmm.
So he did help out with Josh and stuff like that. And Josh did also work at the Marshalloni's that he owned, and
Huh.
So yeah, I think, I don't know. He's a decent guy. I don't particularly like him, but that's just my opinion. But he did adore Wendy, and he treated her very well.
Okay. And we should state for the record is that even though, a lot of times when women go missing, we start looking at the men in their lives. You're on the record, though, as saying you do not believe that Scott had anything to do with her disappearance, correct?
Correct.
All right. Just so we're clear, if anybody thinks we're going in that direction, we're not. We're just talking about Scott because he was the guy in her life, but there's no reason to believe he had anything to do with her disappearance or even knows what happened to her. And we'll come back to that. All right. So Scott and she are a couple. Decent guy. They're together for quite a while. She's working, he owns this pizza place. She works there. I guess Josh, when he eventually gets old enough, maybe starts working there too. Maybe he can start driving, delivering pizzas or something like that. Once again, understanding that you have your own life to lead all this time, Sarah, but getting now much closer into the 2010s, 2013, 2015, 2017, even going up to 2021. How was Wendy doing with her addiction? Was she going to like Narcotics Anonymous? Was she staying sober? How did it look like she was doing now, being that she was back in Illinois? Maybe you and other people, maybe your brothers, other people are seeing more of her. How was she doing in the 2010s, going up to 2021?
She was doing well. She was taking care of herself. She was going to NA and AA. She surrounded herself with friends that were in the program. And spent a lot of time with them, built some good relationships. She did have quite a few slip-ups where she would go out for days at a time.
Okay.
Not frequently, but, every couple months or so, it became kind of a normal that she would leave for like a couple days.
Wow. Okay. And so then it would just be Scott and Josh at home?
Yes.
And Scott just kind of knew that about her. I'm not maybe here to get into Scott's personal life, what he was into, but she would go off by herself. This wouldn't be Scott and she going off together. It would just be her alone.
Her alone, yes.
Okay. All right. And how would you find out about this? Scott would tell you, or you just kind of have an inkling, or she would tell you? How did you know these things were going on?
Usually I would call for her and he wouldn't know where she had been, or he would call my mom's house asking if she had been there, if he knew, she knew where my sister was, and so I would kind of find out either from him or my mom.
Okay. Do you now know today, here in 2025, where she would go when, or is that something you knew at the time, or did you eventually find out? Was it like, a lot of people that are into this, go to a certain hotel, or do you know where she would end up going? Do you know that now, or is that still a mystery?
I do not know. I know that Scott knew that information.
Okay.
I never asked.
Okay. All right. During this time, you or somebody else in your family, did you ever have a conversation with Scott about her, going off like this, worried about her, anything like that? Any conversations you ever had with Scott regarding any of this? And what would he say?
I did several times. He didn't particularly like it that I was like getting into his business.
Oh, okay.
So after a while, I, would just talk to my mom about it, and I wouldn't go through him.
I see. Okay. During this time, she ever had any problems with the law regarding any of this? Like getting pulled over, like, let's just say drinking and driving, or high and driving, or anything, something worse, and any charges that ended up being brought against her for any of this behavior? To your knowledge.
She did get some DUIs back in the early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, after she got divorced and was living in Indiana. So she lost her license for quite a while.
Wow. Okay. But how about more closer to when she went missing? How were the 2010s when she was with Scott? Any? Once again, I realize you have your own life to lead, but anything that you've heard, any issues like that?
No.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the pizza place. She worked there. Was she like manager there? Was she like a cook? As best as you know, maybe you even went to see her when she was there. And just talking about, I'm getting hungry. How many people would work there at one time? What were her duties when she would be working there? What can you just tell us a little bit about the pizza place and her working there?
Well, it was just like a couple blocks from their house, so usually there would be like maybe two or three, or two people working and a driver. It's very small. There's no eat-in, area there. It was basically pick up or delivery. But she, could run the place and, be left there. Her and Scott had their certain days that they worked. Sometimes they worked together. Sometimes they didn't. And I know Scott did work that day earlier, the day that she went missing.
Okay. So if we were to show up there, would she be the one like rolling the dough and putting the pepperoni on the pizza, like handmade, and putting it in the oven or anything? Or was she a little more hands off, or they have somebody else that do that?
No, she would do everything.
She would do everything.
She would answer the phone. She would ring them out. She would make the pizza.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And like you said, she wasn't working there by herself, though. There were at least maybe one or two other people, maybe another person in the building. And if you had a delivery driver, I guess that would make three, something like that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Was this the only location that Scott had, or a couple different locations, or more than one, or just one?
That's the only location.
Okay. Very good. Let's move on to this. Just some general knowledge questions, asking just things about the year 2021 she went missing. To your knowledge, how was that year, in your opinion, going for Wendy? Anybody express any worries about Wendy to you, or maybe you had your own concerns about her? Maybe would the 2021 seem like kind of a going downhill year, or how did it seem to you? Anything usual? Wendy talk about anybody giving her any problems? What can you just say in general about that first half of 2021 and Wendy?
Everything appeared normal. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary with her. Her and Scott had recently gotten a new puppy. We had arranged, I had my mom living down here because I was helping take care of her, and she wanted my mom moved up by her a couple blocks away so she could take over and spend more time with her. And that was just a month before she went disappeared. So there was a lot of good things going. I didn't see or hear of anything. She looked good when I saw her.
Okay. When was the last time you saw her before she went missing? How long before?
It was probably Mother's Day when I went to go see my mom. She was at her place.
All right,
up in Crest Hill.
Mother's Day is in May? April, May? Okay, in May? All right, so you saw her maybe a month before she went missing, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay. And who was the last person in your family to actually see her? Maybe it was you, maybe it was one of your brothers. Who was it?
The last person to see her?
Yeah, in your family.
Probably my mom.
Problem. Okay. All right, so we now come up to this date, and the accepted disappearance date at this point is June 12th of 2021. So we're talking right around Father's Day in June. And what is the general understanding? We're going to get back into this and maybe dissect this a little bit more in a bit. But right now, what is the generally accepted story now in February of 2025 as to what went on that day with Wendy and how she went missing?
Okay, so she was working at Marshallone's. There was one other employee there. She had gotten a phone call. I don't know if it was her cell phone or through the pizza store.
Mm-hmm.
That she told the other employee that somebody needed a ride. She had to leave. So she left there by herself in Scott's vehicle, and that was the last time she was seen.
Okay, and she never came back that day, that evening. Never came back.
No.
But I guess the understanding was it seems maybe this employee was thinking she was going to be coming back. Would you think that would have been a
Yes.
reasonable expectation?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately what time was this? Do you even know that this happened?
I believe around 4 p.m.
All right, so still daylight out. Right there in the afternoon, 4 p.m. in June. Okay. So she gets this call. We're not sure if it's on the phone, her cell phone, and we'll get maybe into pings and records here in a bit. But she immediately takes off, is driving Scott's car. She leaves, doesn't come back. What you have learned about since then, was this common for her to get a call and then automatically leave, or was this something that you've learned is maybe just completely like the first time that this has happened? Any ideas?
I have no idea.
Okay. All right, so nobody came into the store. It was somebody who called her. She takes off. She leaves on her own. Not sure if this has ever happened before. We're unclear on that. So when did somebody, the way you look at it now, of course, we'll get into how you found out that she was missing specifically, but when did somebody, was it Scott? Who was it that finally figured out, something's not right? Or was that night? Was it the next day? What do you remember?
Well, I don't know anything really that when I was Scott until she was reported missing, and that's when I found out.
Okay. All right, so she doesn't come home that night. Any knowledge, just an example of Scott calling, she doesn't come home that night, and he calls you or tries calling your mother or anything like that, or even maybe, what did Josh have to say about that? Do we know anything about any of that later that night into the next morning?
I know that Scott did call my mom. She was aware that she didn't come home.
Okay.
And when I questioned my mom, she just said that she didn't want to worry me because she figured she'd be back the next day.
Mm-hmm. All right, so maybe we're thinking.
At this point, Scott and I really didn't communicate.
Okay. All right, and that's fine. So maybe we're thinking maybe this is one of these times that you've already talked about where she would go off for a couple of days. Maybe it's one of those circumstances.
Yes.
That's one insight into all of this. Okay. So when was it that things got a lot more serious than that? That this is more than her just going off for a couple of days like she would do once in a while? When did it become more than that? What do you remember about that?
Well, seeing it on Facebook that she was a missing person.
Talk a little bit about that.
My knowledge that she was even not at home for several days. So somebody had called me and said, "Hey, is this your sister? She's on Facebook. It says she's missing."
Huh. And it was Scott that posted that?
I believe it was Crest Hill might have put it out.
Crest Hill Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think that they found out about her being missing from Scott? Do you think that's how that worked?
Yes.
Okay, so she goes missing. She doesn't come home that night. Scott then finally goes to the police department. That's how it gets posted. Can you even approximate how many days later this was? So if we're accepting that June 12th, 2021 is the disappearance date, would this have been June 14th, June 15th? Can you even remember? Was it fairly quickly or not fairly quickly?
It was a couple days after she'd been missing. 2 to 3 days.
Okay. So you had to find out through Facebook that your own sister was missing.
Yes.
Okay. Your first impressions when you heard about that? Of course, this is, yeah. Of course, I know the last almost 4 years have been horrible for you and your family. Of course, in podcast world, in my world, the average age of a disappearance we cover on here is like 22 years old. So this is what we would call a very young disappearance, and comparing it to a lot of Unfound's disappearances. But I realize this is not that long ago. What do you remember your first impressions upon reading that? Do you think it was a mistake, or what were you thinking?
My first reaction is I called Scott.
Okay.
And just kind of probably said a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have, but I was very upset.
Sure. Totally understandable, of course.
And I then started calling my family and, talking to them, trying to figure out what's going on, getting some kind of information.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was kind of emotional, so I probably wasn't thinking all that clearly. I was just like, we got to figure out what's going on, if this is real, and...
Right. What did Scott say? Of course, you were very emotional. Maybe, let's just say, maybe even in the back of your mind thinking, could he have done something to her? But we're going to say that again. Scott is not considered a suspect, even if there isn't even a suspect in her disappearance. Do you remember anything he said? Like his response, or did he have any insight of what could have happened to her, anything like that?
No, he really didn't have any idea where she was. She wasn't at, I guess, a usual place that she would go. Mm-hmm. And of course, she had his car, which he needed. Besides, he did sound, worried about her.
Okay. Did he just have the one car, or did he have a couple cars? Do you even know?
He might have had another car that he used for delivery, but I think that was the main car.
Okay. And did you ever, of course, like I said, we not suspecting Scott is involved here, but do you know where he was? Of course, he was not at the store that day at 4 o'clock when she left. Was he at home? Was he out somewhere? Do we even know Scott's location when she did get that call at 4 o'clock?
The police told me that his whereabouts at the time, I believe, was at a bar, and he did have alibis. Mm-hmm. They also did search the house, the vehicle, which I think the phone and the vehicle are still impounded. At least as of last year, the police still had the vehicle, and he was very cooperative. And was, totally cleared as not a suspect.
Okay. Those early days, any theories about you're talking to your mother. Of course, there's Scott. You said maybe you and he not get along so well. Once again, none of our business. But of course, I don't know if your other brother had passed away at this point or was still alive, but all of you talking, any theories? Anybody have any guesses about where she could be like that first week that she went missing, getting toward like the mid to the end of June? Any insights at all as to, what could be going on here?
We really thought she was in Joliet somewhere with friends. Probably that first week or so. Put out flyers all over Crest Hill, Joliet area.
Mm-hmm.
Talked to people, hotels, liquor stores, convenience stores, and really didn't find. There was tips that came in that maybe a hotel they saw her. I looked at tons of footage and I did not recognize any of them as her. So I really thought in that first couple weeks that we would find her.
And maybe for everybody who doesn't know Illinois very well, this she went missing in Crest Hill. So how close are Crest Hill and Joliet, Illinois? How close are those two locations?
They kind of just blend right into. Crest Hill is very small.
Oh.
So it's kind of like a smaller part of Joliet per se. It's basically just a couple neighborhoods. They do have a school, but it's basically kind of in Joliet.
Okay. All right, so very close to each other.
Yes.
And then maybe like Crest Hill could even maybe like be a suburb or something of Joliet. Of course, Joliet, the way I think of Joliet, it's a pretty big city. Of course, it's not Chicago, but it's pretty big. So Crest Hill, kind of a suburb of Joliet?
Yes.
Something like that. Okay. Let's move on to this. Now, let's just, of course, Scott was the one that originally filed the report, but it does seem like it took a few days. In your opinion, do you think that he waited a few days because of the prior experience he had with Wendy and kind of her actually disappearing for a couple days and then coming back? Do you think that's why it took a few days, or what other insight do you have into that?
Yeah, he probably thought she would have been home. And figured, to wait a couple days, and then when she didn't come home is probably when he filed.
Okay. All right, so nothing suspicious. Once again, you may not realize this, Sarah, but for me doing 360 disappearances now, sometimes we get a little suspicious. Well, guys in a relationship with a woman, and they're living together, and they're used to seeing each other all the time, and she goes missing, but then he doesn't file a report for 3 days, and that's usually a little bit of a yellow, if not red flag. But in this situation, might not be quite that way, because of Wendy's prior behavior. Now, you did say, of course, she got in his car and left, and she's still missing. But the car, of course, it's Scott's car, but it was eventually found. How soon was it found? How was it found? Where was it found? What can you say about the car she was driving, Scott's car?
Okay, so the car was found, they said abandoned, June 17th. So this was 5 days after she went missing.
Okay.
In Joliet. It's kind of on a dead-end street across from... we have the Des Plaines River that runs through Joliet, and there's some kind of industrial areas down there, so it's kind of a questionable area and a strange place for the car to be.
Okay.
I mean, we grew up in Joliet. We're familiar with all this area. Could she have left the car there? She could have. I don't see any why she would have left it there. And inside the car, they found her wallet and her credit cards. And they also found a key card for Motel 6. But they're not sure if that was actually her card or if somebody from the motel was in her car.
Right. Okay. So we're not sure who put the car there. Maybe Wendy parked the car there. Maybe somebody else parked the car there.
Correct.
Okay. You said that this area is kind of shady. Any apartments around? Any houses around? any people, places where people lived close to where the car was eventually found?
Yeah, it's kind of a lower income area. I don't know about like that kind of area, if it was apartments or houses or rental houses or that, but I know it's a lower income area.
Okay. And so it was found on the 17th. Was anybody able ever to determine how long it had been parked there?
No.
So we don't know. Could have been parked there just a couple hours before it was found, or could have been there since the day she went missing. Anything in between. Anything and in between that.
Anything in between, yeah.
Okay. Any idea that Wendy would be familiar with that area? Once again, I realize people weren't following her around or anything, but do you think that she had ever been to that street in Joliet before?
It's possible, but I have no knowledge of it.
Okay. Was it locked? Was there anything wrong with it? Did it run? What do you know about the condition of the vehicle?
I don't know any of those answers. I do know that they did find DNA off of, I believe they said, a water bottle of a male, which they didn't, the police did not share any specific information. But that person did check out to be not a suspect.
All right, so they actually figured out whose DNA that was?
I believe so.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm impressed by that. Good for them. And this person, not considered to be a suspect in her disappearance at all?
Correct.
Wow. Okay. I'll ask you again, maybe specifically. Was it locked? Did they have the keys, or did they have to get a Slim Jim and cut a key? Do you even know anything about any of that?
I don't know if it was locked. I don't know, if it ran out of gas, or they didn't say there was any damage to it, or it didn't look like there was any foul play inside the car.
Okay. And I think you did say earlier in this interview that the police still have that car. It's still impounded?
As of last year, yes.
Wow, Scott can't be too pleased with that. He still owns the car, but the police still have it in the impound lot. So Scott hasn't been able to drive it since the summer of 2021.
Right.
Wow. Okay. All right. That's a little unusual. You should know, Sarah, that we've covered many disappearances where owners of cars get the car back the same day. So that they still have it in impound almost 4 years later, that is unique. Okay, so the car's parked there. Anybody could have parked it there, it seems. No sign that somebody else was driving it. We don't know how long it was sitting there. It's not wrecked. Being that it's parked, it probably wasn't out of gas. Nothing necessarily unusual about it. Do you even know how it was found? Was there like a be on the lookout? Did a police officer just happen upon it because there was like some, be on the lookout for this car? Do you even know how it was happened upon?
I do not remember. I don't remember if somebody in the area that lived on the street called and said, hey, this car's been sitting out here, or if just patrol ended up seeing it, ran the plates, and figured out whose car it was.
Okay. Approximately, how long of a drive is it from the pizza place to where the car was found in minutes?
I'd say 7.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Between 5 and 10 with traffic lights.
All right.
Probably an average of 7 minutes.
Wow, very close. In fact, if you're really, really motivated, you could almost walk it. That's how close. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to this. So we have the car. We now want to talk about the phone. You said, was her phone found in the car? Did you tell me that her phone is in evidence as well?
Yes.
Now, it was not found in the car, though. It was found somewhere else. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, how that all went down?
All right, so the phone was found on the 15th in Romeoville in a parking lot / alley area.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have specific address for that.
Okay.
But it was found by some random person, and they turned it into the police station.
And being this is Romeoville, so this is nowhere near where the car was found?
No.
Wow. Now, how far is that away from the pizza place?
30 minutes.
A lot
40
farther.
minutes.
A lot farther away.
Yeah.
So car 5 to 10 minutes.
I'd have no reason to believe my sister went to Romeoville.
Okay. So the way you understand it, this phone's just kind of sitting there right in this alleyway as if somebody just threw it out the window of a car or something like that.
Yes.
Okay, but nowhere near where the car was found. Interesting. Okay, Romeoville's where the phone was found, in an alley. The car is found in Joliet, only like we've already stated, 5 to 10 minutes away, depending on traffic. Regarding the phone, do we know anything about the records? Do we know anything about if she texted anybody, any ping information? Do we know anything about any of that?
The police were not forthcoming with any information on the phone.
All right,
and I don't know, I'm sure Scott can get his phone records. I don't know if there's, that information wasn't given to me either.
Okay. Yeah, they're usually pretty protective of that stuff. Maybe sometimes we hope that, if you have a bunch of people on the same phone plan, one of the other people on the plan can get the records. That does happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but it is, I guess, nice when it does happen. But maybe what you're talking about here is more what we're used to, at least what I'm used to when talking to people. So we don't have any records. We don't, for example, to this day, do we know who called the pizza place or her phone that day before she took off? Do we have any idea who that person is?
No.
Nobody's ever come forward and say, "Hi, I'm John Smith. I'm the one that called Wendy that day."
No. And I don't know if the police found out through records and talked to that person. They have very limited information that they can share.
Yeah, of course. Regarding both the car and the phone, did you find out about the discoveries of both of those fairly quickly? Within
yes.
They automatically maybe told you or your mother or somebody in your family that, man, we found the car. Man, we found the phone.
Yeah, I was working with the detectives in Crest Hill. They called me, and I was kind of the communication person for the family. They also spoke to Scott separately, and then I would speak to my siblings and my mom, and so whenever something came up or they had a surveillance video, they would call me right away. So they found out about the car and the phone right away.
Okay. Regarding this phone call, once again, I'm not sure if we're, we always, want to believe what missing people say right before they go missing, but I've learned so much over the years that sometimes people who go missing lie before they go missing for whatever reason. But Wendy said, well, she had to go pick somebody up. To this day, do you have any idea who this person could have been that she was allegedly going to pick up?
No.
No idea. Maybe has Scott ever said, well, I think it might be Jane Doe. I think it might have been John Smith you called. Has there even been any guessing? Forgive the not meant to be a pun, but any theorizing as to who this person could have been who called and needed a ride?
No.
No. Okay. All right, let's move on to this. Now, my understanding, though, is, and the listeners know how I feel about sightings, but we have to talk about it. Was there a sighting of Wendy after June 12th? Something that we might think might be believable. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? My understanding is there was.
There was. There was at a motel off of Route 55 and 80. I'm sorry, not 55 and 80. Off of Route 80, there's some motels there. Some are known for drug activity. And they were in the car, in Scott's car, in the parking lot. There was Wendy and a male.
Huh. Now, how far would that be away from the pizza place, and how close is that to the two locations where the car was found and where the phone was found? How would that sighting go along with these two other locations, or maybe we might say three other locations?
Probably about I'd say about 10 minutes from the pizza place, 10 to 12 minutes. And from where the car was found, probably about 5.
All right, so that could lend a lot of credibility. Somebody sees the sighting, and that's near where the car was found. Not that far away. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When did this sighting come to light? Was this like within a couple weeks of her going missing, or did this witness, did it take a little while?
It was about a week or two after that, we found out that it was her car that was, in the parking lot, and that was from somebody who worked at the motel.
Okay. This motel allow you to watch any video? Did they have video cameras to why don't we talk, because I know you said earlier that you did watch some video. Why don't we talk a little bit about that? You actually did watch video from this particular location?
That one, I believe it was a still picture in the parking lot. It was very grainy, but it was Scott's vehicle.
It was. Okay. And do you remember what date was on that photo?
I do not.
Okay. So it's very possible. Of course, she's missing now. Of course, we hope that Wendy is still alive. We always hold out that hope here on the podcast. But this sighting, this freeze frame, this picture could have been a few days after she went missing. Could be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about now you did watch video too, right? Correct? Or not?
Yes.
They gave you access to, I'm guessing it would have been a hard drive or something. You sat there for hours and watched it. Talk a little bit about that.
Actually, whenever they would have sightings or have surveillance that, could be possibly her from the area, they would send it to my phone, and I would watch it.
Oh, okay.
So, I didn't have to sit through hours. There wasn't a lot, but if there was a female around her age that, had similar description, they would send me the footage.
But the only time you ever saw what you believed to be Wendy, or at least Scott's car, was on that one picture.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to this. Speaking of Scott, how would you say, once again, we realize that he is not a suspect in this. Can you talk a little bit about his reaction? Did he ever offer up his own theory as to what happened? Anything, has he ever, mentioned, well, I think this is what happened to Wendy, or I think that this person actually called her that day? Anything like that? He's the one that was in a relationship with her for over 10 years. You'd think he'd have some good insight. He was the one seeing her every day.
Right. I did not speak to him directly. After I found out she went missing and called him initially, unless it was the time that I went over there to get her stuff. I was very upset with him and chose not to speak to him.
Okay.
So I don't know any of his speculations or anything like that.
All right. So still almost 4 years later, you're still not sure what is in Scott's head regarding Wendy's disappearance.
No.
The police have talked to him, and I guess it sounds like he's been helpful. So whatever is in Scott's head, seemingly he's only told that to the police.
Yes.
Okay. What about searches? Of course, we've talked about two important locations here. We talked about the location where her car, or his car, her driving it, was found, and then the phone. Any searches done in those areas? I mean, are these like very urban areas where there's not like any forest or woods or anything? Or, how would you explain them? If she parked the car and started walking off, is there a prospect, an idea that, there are woods there and maybe she went into the woods and died there? What can you say about any searches done? Any?
Well, they have said that they've gotten tips and they've done searches along Route 6 and the Des Plaines River, which is very close. It's only a couple blocks from where the vehicle was left.
Okay.
They even went back a year ago and searched again with cadaver dogs and drones along that same area. And it was said in the newspaper that they had found another or heard another tip that came in that led them to do another search. So as far as the phone, I don't know what kind of area it was found in. I'm sure they asked around or, searched some part of the area. And I know they did ask in the neighborhood on the dead-end street where the car was left and try to talk to people to see if they saw anything, heard anything. And I don't believe they came up with anything.
Okay. Did you tell me in a prior conversation regarding the location where the car was found that near this location there was kind of like a party house or something like that, or like what they might call a trap house or something like that? Did you tell me that, or am I imagining things?
To my understanding, that's what the police had said.
Okay.
That close by there had been, I don't know if you call it a drug house or a party house or, a lot of people coming and going and probably not a good situation.
Okay. What about other people? Of course, Scott is the man in her life, but did she have of course she has her family, but like other friends? Maybe, hopefully ones maybe that aren't into drugs, but I know we can't be too selective on this. But have any of them come forward to be helpful, said anything, giving any good insight over the past 3.5 years, anything like that?
I believe most of her friends that, Scott knew about and that came forward are a lot of people that she's built friendships with through AA and NA and spent a lot of time with.
Yeah.
She didn't have anybody come around, that were addicts or, sketchy or that Wendy and Scott didn't personally know well, ever. So whoever she went to go pick up or to go see or wherever she was going to go, it wasn't somebody that her normal friends or family knew.
Huh. It certainly, of course, when we talked about this call, to reiterate this, if anybody missed it, regarding this call that came into the pizza place, we're still not sure if it came into the pizza number or her number, right?
Correct.
We just don't know. We would know if we had access to her phone records, but we don't have them. And maybe we might even know if we had access to the pizza phone records, but if it was a local call, then it might not register anywhere anyway. So we
There
still
might not have been even a call.
might not. Are you? I have to ask. Are you open to that? Is that
Yeah,
something that's on your mind, that there wasn't really any call at all, that she just left?
yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's the official, that's the ongoing story, that she got a call, but it very well may be that there was no call and she just picked up and left at 4 o'clock.
Right.
Okay.
I know that she left for some reason
Mm.
on her own, and I know I don't know all the pieces in between,
Yeah.
but something bad happened.
And I guess what we're really, really stressing here is it's not like, for example, she went out to get something out of her car and got carjacked. It wasn't something like
Right.
that. It seems like it was a very deliberate choice on her part to leave the pizza place in her car, and there was nobody came to pick her up or anything like that. All on her own, she left.
Correct.
Okay. How tough have the last, it's over 3.5 years, not quite 4 years. How tough has this been, Sarah? For you, and if you could speak for the rest of your family, how tough has this been?
It's been very hard. Mostly on my nephew, and my mom. It's hard not knowing what happened, not being able to have some kind of closure. I know what I feel in my heart that has happened, and I've been at peace with it, but I know the rest of my family really needs that kind of closure to kind of move on.
Yeah. Over the past 3.5 years, has somebody come and collected, I don't know if it would be your DNA or mother's DNA, to get it all registered? Do authorities have your DNA in case remains are found somewhere that they can be tested?
No.
That hasn't been done yet?
No.
Okay. Yeah, we gotta get that done. Okay. And of course, Scott, I guess he's still alive. The pizza place still exists here in 2025.
Yes.
It does. He's still around.
Yep.
It doesn't sound like you have a relationship with him. Does anybody else in your family speak to him? What kind of relationship do he and Josh have?
Now they don't talk to each other at all.
They don't. Oh. Okay. Is that because of the disappearance or something else? If it's something else, you don't have to say what it is. But I'm just wondering: is this fallout from the disappearance, or is it fallout from something else?
It's probably from the disappearance. It's not his dad.
Yeah.
It'd be weird to kind of be living there. I had to come and pack up my sister's stuff and put it in storage, so that it wasn't donated. And I just took personal stuff like scrapbooks, pictures. She had some collections and jewelry, and she loved baseball hats and tons of scarves. So I gave some of stuff to my mom, but I also boxed up and stuff that meant something to her. And I just don't feel like Josh felt like he had like a place there.
Okay. Yeah, there was no more connection. I mean, the connection that he had to Scott was through his mother, and now his mother is gone.
Yes.
So, and of course, he's 28 years old now anyway. Maybe he wanted to move out and do his own thing anyway. What? Even if Wendy hadn't gone missing, maybe Josh would have moved out and done his own thing anyway by the time 2025 rolls around. Okay. Do you have a website, Facebook page, anything like that set up for Wendy's disappearance specifically? If so, why don't you tell the listeners about it right now?
I don't have anything specific. I just post on her Facebook page, on her timeline. like I will be doing tomorrow for her birthday,
Mm-hmm.
to wish her a happy birthday. But yeah, just through her Facebook page.
And so her Facebook page, her own personal page, from when she was still around, it still exists.
Yes.
All right, and you have access to it.
Yes.
Okay. So is that Wendy Gessing, Gessing, if people wanted to find it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So there you go, everybody. If we don't have an official page, but sometimes it works out that the missing person had their own page, and then family member kind of, that's the way they, keep everybody updated, just using the missing person's personal page. Not common, but it does happen. I'm guessing you had to do a little work to get access to it. I'm guessing you didn't have like the password or anything, or how did that all happen?
Well, I can't change anything on there.
Oh, okay.
Only she can. I just post to her timeline.
Oh, I gotcha.
Pictures and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
I can't really do that unless I would have a death certificate, because that's what I did for my brother.
Okay. I gotcha. All right. So you have access to, like anybody can, go in onto some other page and post something. That's
Yes.
that's the extent of what you can do. All right. So anybody wants to see what Sarah has posted about Wendy's disappearance over the last 3.5 years, just find Wendy Gessing on Facebook. Okay. Once again, it's just Wendy's previous personal page. Sarah, any final words before we complete this interview?
Just if anybody knows something, hears something, even if it's not about Wendy, please come forward. There's anonymous tip lines. I don't know.
Okay. All right, yeah. If anybody knows anything, you got to come forward. If you live in the Crest Hill, Joliet, Illinois, or maybe even Romeoville area, and of course, this disappearance is not even quite 4 years old, so everybody's memories from that time should still be at least kind of fresh. And if you heard anything in this interview that sparked something in your mind about something that could be connected to Wednesday's disappearance, yeah, you got to come forward. Which police department is responsible for her disappearance right now?
Crest Hill Police Department.
All right, so anybody reach out to the Crest Hill Police Department in Illinois. Sarah, I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And that was my February 27th, 2025 interview with Sarah, younger sister of Wendy Gessing. I thank Sarah for joining me and all of you on this episode. I've made a map video for this episode. Please check it out on Unfound's YouTube channel and make sure to like and share it. On the surface, Wendy's disappearance does feel like a situation where this was one like all the other times when Wendy took off without explanation, but then with this one, something went really, really wrong. With the possibility that Wendy overdosed and others, or maybe just one person, covered it up. Keep in mind, there are no facts to support that. Yet, looking at Wendy the person, this theory seems possible. But there's a problem with this scenario. And this goes to the entire idea that addicts cover up other addicts' lethal overdoses. Really? There's not a lot of proof that this happens. Seriously, when was the last time you heard of somebody getting pulled over by police and there was an overdose victim in the back seat or the trunk? Yeah, I've never read any news like that either. I'm not saying that it's never happened, but that I can't think of a situation like that off the top of my head tells me that it must be very rare. What I'm saying is, at least here in the United States, I don't think we have a lot of people driving around with dead addicts, all in an attempt to cover up an overdose.
In fact, even in the broader context, when have we ever heard about an addict or addicts who later led police, family, or friends to where an overdose victim was dumped? Yeah, that's not very common either, despite us all knowing that there are all sorts of people overdosing in the United States. To add on to all of this, when was the last time somebody went to jail for being in the company of someone who overdosed? Even the woman who gave John Belushi his speedball only went to jail for 15 months. So for Wendy, this must all be considered. In fact, given the car and phone situation, the she overdosed and people covered it up theory might even be more unlikely than the stats say. All I can say for sure is, until Wendy's disappearance is resolved, we at Unfound will not let anything get in our way of helping her family. If you'd like to hear and read more of my in-depth analysis into the disappearance of Wendy Gessing, please go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast, sign up, and partake in the Unfound blog. Until then, I leave the public theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you'd like, please give Unfound a nice review on whatever application you use. I'm Ed Dunsel, and you've been listening to Unfound.